And there wasn't a better way as the classes progressed than to join with Alpena Community College, which was started in 1960. And that formalized the program. That put the professionalism in the education and program and accredited the program as well.
I also had to learn a lot about the cultures of the world, because the program was bringing students in from literally the four corners of our world.
We did whatever it took to promote the industry, plus make sure that the people, being such a specialized industry, the people had to know how to operate and adjust the machinery.
We got a head start, Besser got a head start along with Alpena Community College in being the best possible place for people to train.
What also really made it nice and interesting was innovations Besser came up with. New technology, new pieces of equipment. I got a chance to actually work on it, install it in the plant, then come back to the school and help the customer understand how it worked, what he had to do or what they had to do to teach their people.
In our case as educators, we're in front of the class, and I always thought it was unique. Within that first hour, I would look over at a student's face and I would see the, I get it moment. And to me, my day was already made just from that one little idea that I had shortened his learning curve, and he had already started on his path of lifelong learning.
Coming to my first class and being introduced to Bob Rohn, in my mind, he was like a rock star.
There's a plaque in the World Center for Concrete Technology that says, Besser Company, Alpena Community College, Education and Industry United. And I often refer to that as one of my favorite places on our campus, because it does not only symbolize but indicate the reality of what I call the best partnership between a community college and a private company that I have ever seen in nearly 40 years of the community college business.
Good morning. My name is Don McMaster. I'm Vice President for Workforce Development at Alpena Community College. I'm the Director of the World Center for Concrete Technology. The idea for this documentary came from a letter that Eric Krebs, a friend and colleague you will see later in this documentary, pulled from a file that he had. It was a letter written by Jesse Besser in 1954 articulating his vision for a training program that would allow folks who are his customers, Besser Company customers, to learn more about Besser block making equipment. And from that letter, 60 years later, we've had 12,000 trainees from around the world come to Alpena and the World Center of Concrete Technology for classes, which we call the Blockmakers series. It's been a wonderful experience for Alpena Community College. We hope the next 60 years run as well as the last 60 years. Hello, I'm Jim Park, past president and chief executive officer of Besser Company. My intent today is to talk a little of the history and the future of concrete technology. Thanks for the opportunity to review the concrete technology at Besser Company and Alpena Community College. The beginning of learning to make highest quality concrete products goes back when Jesse Besser personally showed users how to use Besser machines and make them the top quality product. He built in what was called the second stop on the machine, and this is a mechanical machine. And it wasn't really necessary, but he was so concerned that we have top quality in that product that he had that second stop, which continued the vibration, which made a product that we could be proud of. And his major thrust in life, and we heard it over and over, was we need a dense and watertight product. So that's what we set out to accomplish. When Jesse Besser's great-nephew Phil Park came on the scene in the 1930s and took on the sales function, his proposal to the Venezuelan government in the late 30s was to build simple homes in Puerto Cabello, Venezuela. And that order was accepted, and his job was then to deliver the equipment,
install it, train the operators, and build homes, build the 400 homes. So Jesse and Phil both recognized how critical the training would be to the future of the Besser Company. I enjoyed that first overseas venture since I was at the age of 1, got a chance to sit on that those first block that were formed out of that machine. Customers need the right mix of materials in order to make good concrete, as well as instruction on operating the equipment and how to maintain it. For several years, that job was done at the plant at Besser Company in one of our workshops, and that started in 1954. The purpose, of course, was to assure that the first block coming out of the machine was a saleable product, and that was our objective at all times. A better place to teach was required, and therefore Besser Company set up funds at Alpena Community College to build a facility for Blockmakers training. Therefore, the Besser Blockmakers program was put into high gear. Buildings and equipment were provided for a fully operational plant.
My name is Don Clay. I worked in the Blockmakers classes for, well, most of the 80s. Prior to that, though, I had worked as a journeyman bricklayer, and I lived downstate, moved up to Alpena, and got a job with Besser Company in their machine shop, building the machines, and I didn't like it indoors. So I went to the ACC Community College, Alpena Community College, and I talked with Jim Donikuski, who was the head of the concrete program, and I went through the 2-year concrete program while I still worked full-time at Besser's. My intention was to leave Besser Company and do outdoor work. Before I got done, since I had built the machines at Besser's and had a concrete background from the ACC program, Besser Company asked me to stay with them and to work in the Blockmakers workshops.
I started with the Besser Company in 1978. I started as a trainee, a service trainee, and one of my first exposures to Besser Company was to be assigned to the Besser Blockmaker workshops, or at that time it was called research and training. I was involved in taking the classes, learning about aggregates, all the pertinent materials that Besser was presenting to their other subsidies, if you will. And then I was transferred in 1978, late in 78, out to Virginia. I spent 2.5 years in Virginia as a service trainee, and then I moved to Texas, and I spent about 5.5 years there as, again, service sales trainee. And then we also traveled, 4 and 5 different states at that time. So it was extensive travel, contacting Besser customers, trying to help them out mechanically, electrically, and also, obviously, in sales, mold parts and machine parts. Then I was transferred up to the Indiana district at that time, run by Barney Stafford, and spent about 2.5 years there. And finally, wanting to get off the road and watch my kids grow up, had an opportunity to come back. There was an opening in the Blockmaker workshops. And of course, my education is in education, so it was finally an opportunity to put some of that college learning experiences back to experiences that I could help or share with others. So in 1988, I moved back to Alpena and became a member of the Blockmaker workshops. Now that, of course, entailed starting, watching the people that were presenting the classes, seeing how the whole system worked, how Besser customers were coming in, how they became student customers because of the association with the Alpena Community College at that time. We were located at the Besser Research and Training Center at a different facility, and I slowly worked myself through the application with the help of others and learning from them to an instructor in the Blockmaker workshops.
First of all, with Besser Company, I became involved back in 1990. I went to work for him as a service tech, June 5th of 1990, and worked there as a service tech for a number of years, and then traveled the world. You have to go overseas, domestic, overseas, basically going into a plant, installing equipment, and troubleshooting for Besser customers. And then in the fall of '99, I had a chance to come over to the Blockmakers school. And during that time, I worked with Eric Krebs, Bob Rohn, and Pete Alexander as an instructor. And my role in that was to teach the PLC, electrical troubleshooting, hydraulics, pneumatics, some of the CM Tech, concrete masonry technology, basically anything that has to do with or had to do with Blockmakers training. We actually had students from all over the world, all walks of life, some of them with four-year college degrees, some of them with high school diplomas, but what was really interesting is it all came together at the end of the week. As we brought them together, we started out on an even keel, and then our training, we would always find out who had the most experience in the room. And then we started out at ground zero and brought the training up to that level. And then that way everybody got a lot out of it, and it was a good class.
In middle 90s, I was asked to attend the VibraPack class up in Alpena, Michigan, and I was part of many different other employees of Anchor Block Company to come up here, and I felt it was a great honor, and it was turned out to be an extraordinary experience, and the knowledge that I got out of that really brought me to the next level. The instruction that I had from not only Bob Rohn but Eric Krebs, and now going through all those years of being a student, joining Besser Company in June of 2012, and now instructing at the school, it's great to see when you teach and the students finally get what you're teaching. It might not be the first day, it might not be the second day, but in the course of that week, you start seeing the fireworks go off in their head, and they start getting it, and there's nothing more satisfying than seeing the students get excited and finally understand what you're talking about.
With this outstanding sales staff, which you can see in this photo, we were able to find customers who were interested in making their equipment run properly. And U.S. producers would typically come for a week at a time and then go back to the plant and install what they had learned in their classroom. Overseas customers tend to come for 4 weeks at a time because they'd paid just money to get here, and so a 4-week class worked better for them. It was then determined that we needed an incentive to do 4 weeks. So a program was developed after 4 courses that you would be a master of block machining. And we ended up calling it the Master Blockmaker.
I always thought the impact that the Blockmaker workshops had was really much further reaching than I thought to begin with. In other words, it was a local Alpena Community College that it was being held at, but yet our students were literally from all over the world. So, we would have people come in from China. We would have a whole contingent from the Russian, at that time, the Russian or Soviet Union. And then different classes from Mexico. It really started to dawn on me that the impact was much broader than just Alpena, Michigan. So there were no other, to my knowledge, there were no other competitors of Besser companies that were presenting that strategic of a goal to get customers to come in and obviously learn on Besser equipment, but in a stage where it's CM Tech, concrete masonry, then it pertained to any block, any masonry products that were made on any competitive machines also. So we would have our competitors that were running other block machines would also be part of these classes. And there again, that kind of lit me up that said, hey, we are presenting to the total concrete industry, or at least the masonry industry. And with the accolades that we were getting and the comments, we always, at the end of the classes, we'll have comments, and they, in most cases, were pretty well done, and we were by far the best in the industry as far as presenting materials to the industry that would make them better and make a better product. And of course, if they make a better product, we like that as far as Besser Company, of course, and our competitors also like that. Regardless of what type of machine you're using, if you have a good product and that masonry is presented well, then it's received more and more by the industry. So it was kind of an eye-opener, especially when we moved to the World Center for Concrete Technology. I thought that was a pretty auspicious name, World Center, but then truly when you looked at it and who we were teaching to, from bringing in translators, and obviously I don't speak a lot of Russian or Spanish, so we had to have translators come in, simultaneous translation. It became a real challenge. We would also, sometimes we would have up to 500 students in 1 year. So we had to move. We were growing so fast as the industry was growing, we had to increase our class structure, and of course that kind of leads into where the World Center was developed.
The impact of WCCT nationwide or internationally is it enables companies to send their employees up to get structured training for equipment. And in my world, people are the number one asset. So you have to have trained personnel in your facility. You know, in 2014, after the downturn, we're having that same problem. We're having problems with finding people to work in the industry. And as people have retired over the years, that knowledge just hasn't been transferred. So places like WCCT and the hands-on training with the technological advances that have happened over the 20 years, this is a much-needed resource for the industry. And we've been seeing, even after the downturn, our students, our classes are becoming more fuller and fuller and fuller. So I think it's an invaluable and cheap, relatively cheap, meaning you can send somebody up here for, you know, less than an hour of downtime in your facilities, and they can leave on a Friday and go back refreshed with a bunch of information that they can use to cross-train their other fellow employees.
The uniqueness of the Blockmakers course and impact throughout the world and domestically is really interesting. It is one of a kind. I know it because I've taught overseas in China, Malaysia, all through the Caribbean for Besser Company, and online courses for the college. The uniqueness, there's nothing actually offered exactly like this. The reason I say that is the training is here, the Blockmakers training is here, and Besser Company put a plan in at the World Center for Concrete Technology. They donated the equipment, so you can actually learn on the actual equipment. It isn't only out of a book, it's hands-on, which is really unique. In the industry, a lot of us, we learn better with hands-on instead of just reading a book, regurgitating information. And throughout the world, which is really unique, customers have told me in China and the Caribbean and all over, that's what makes Besser really unique as a company, is because of the training. Their training is above and beyond others, and they can put the equipment in, take it from A to Z, put the equipment in, sell the equipment, put it in, train the people, bring it to fruition, and then come back if anybody needs more training and show them mixed designs, show them adjustments, and everything that goes into that.
Well, with any industry and any educational enterprise, there are always challenges, and we shouldn't regret that, because challenges present opportunities for bringing out the best in people and rising to meet them. And during my 10 years here at Alpena Community College, working with Besser Company, probably the biggest challenge was the recession that hit in 07, 08, 09, even through 10. And it had a tremendous effect on the concrete industry in a not very good way. And we saw the very healthy enrollment of on-the-ground blockmaker classes dwindle down to nothing or almost nothing for 2 or 3 years there. As companies were downsizing, their staffs were smaller, the resources for training and education were less than what they had been. And so it was a real reversal for the World Center for Concrete Technology, for Besser Company, and for ACC and its training enterprises to weather that storm, to meet that challenge. And in fact, we went through some tough times there. But as I said, challenges like that bring out the best in people. One of the adaptations that we were able to meet with the help of Don McMaster and Gary Hollingsworth was the conversion of instruction to online methodologies that did not require people to go physically from other parts of the world and other parts of the country all the way to Alpena. And so the online methodology offers an opportunity for several things. You avoid the travel, you avoid the accommodation expenses, and so on. You also have the opportunity to convert the training into, instead of 40 continuous hours during a work week, it can be intermittent, it can be spaced out. It's training on demand that people can budget their time for. I was very pleased to see how we were able to respond to the recession in ways that made sense to the industry.
The experience with Blockmakers led us to develop the college curriculum, including concrete technology, associate's degree, and now further opportunities to get a four-year degree and further degrees.
My name is Don Newport, and it was a pleasure for me to take on the presidency of Alpena Community College in 1987 and serve for the next 16 years as its president. During that time, I learned a lot about a particular industry that for many years has been one of the premier programs, partnerships, relationships with business and industry in the United States. That's the concrete industry. And I'm looking forward to having a chance to kind of reflect a bit on that relationship and why it was such a special one. For many years, Alpena Community College actually had a second name. It was called the Concrete College because of the very unique relationship which the college had established with the Besser Company way back in the 50s and which has continued on today. When I came here to the college, we were probably at midpoint, but at one of the high points in the industry, and lots of things were going on. We were seeing many students from literally around the world come to the college and take on the task of learning how to run one of those monster machines that Besser Company is so famous for producing.
I well recall my first trip to Alpena Community College when I was interviewing for the position. This was back in November of 2003. And my first stop was the World Center for Concrete Technology. I was conducted there by Dean of Workforce Development, Chuck Wiesen. And we walked in, and he described this as the finest concrete technology facility training area for the whole world. And I thought, well, my goodness, Alpena, Michigan, the center of world activity for this part of an industry that's been so important for Alpena. And it's turned out to be true to the word, or true to the description, true to the name. As I've observed the kind of activity that goes on in the World Center in collaboration with Besser Company and other industry partners, it's been truly an eye-opener for me. In my position involves oversight of the World Center for Concrete Technology, which is a part of Alpena Community College. And so the directors or the co-directors have always reported directly to me, and they have conducted the operations in a manner where I was kept informed, and I had an opportunity to guide the direction, participate in visioning and strategic planning for the center. So it's been a very rewarding experience for me. Another person who's been very heavily involved with the management and oversight of the World Center of Concrete Technology is Vice President Richard Sutherland, who's our Chief Financial Officer. And so we've always had, with the co-directors, beginning with Bob Eller and Eric Krebs when I first arrived, and then now with Vice President for Workforce Development, Don McMaster, we've had an opportunity to participate in the growth and the activities of the World Center for Concrete Technology and coordinate closely with Besser Company in the process of running it.
Besser Company has been involved with the training with Besser employees for years. I mean, some of the guys are legendary in the industry. You know, Bob Rohn. My father actually participated for many years in teaching the mechanical portion of the classes, and so that was always a help for me when I was in the field to call in, and I could get my dad most any hours, and it was always helpful to get the proper adjustment and proper answers. Bob Rohn was legendary with his electrical knowledge. Eric Krebs, Jeff Oliver, I know that there have been many of them that the fact that they're instructors and working in the lab every day, they became outstanding Besser employees to go out in the field and provide training in customer plants. And it was always a unique opportunity that Besser Company had the skill sets to go and provide training, whether it was in Costa Rica, whether it was in China, whether it was in Russia. And we've been all over the world providing outstanding training that was supported by Alpena Community College and now the World Center for Concrete Technology. So.
Of course, the first major instructor was Lucas Pfeifenberger, who was to become the guru of concrete technology. Coming from Alton, Illinois, with an engineering degree at Illinois, he specialized in concrete. Lucas was known around the world as the guru and was invited by many countries to present the story of concrete technology at sessions. He received a couple of honorary doctorate degrees during his travels and was well known in the industry. My favorite with Lucas has to do with the year that Luis Arias and I went to try and sell equipment in Baghdad. The people in Baghdad wanted to build homes of concrete masonry, so their order was to be for 5 large machines and 10 small machines. And they had some tough requirements. Number one, it had to guaranteed to meet certain speeds. Well, that was one requirement. The second requirement was they had to have special prices because it was a large order. And thirdly, they wanted immediate delivery. Well, Jim and Luis were glad to provide most of those answers, but Lucas was a good moderating for us because the machines at that time were running 8 cycles a minute, and these people wanted us to promise 9 cycles a minute. So we kind of hedged between 8 and 9 cycles. And he would quietly remind us that the machine would really not quite do all those things that we were promising. But nonetheless, we made the order, and at that point I called Alpena to order the 50-cycle motors that were needed to build those 15 block machines. And so we ordered those, and the intent would be build the machinery quickly, put it on planes if we have to meet their delivery requirements, and get that order. Fortunately, we lost the order, because the German company that won the order was not able to do any of those 3 things, and the only thing we were stuck with was a few extra 50-cycle motors, which we use out in eastern Canada these days.
So I'm up here from Texas in my first month or so, and back in the winter of 2004. And Bob Eller, the co-director of the World Center for Concrete Technology, told me, "Olin, there's a fellow that's going to want to see you, and his name is Lucas Pfeifenberger." And I said, "All right, you know what? Why should I meet with him?" I mean, it wasn't an arrogant question; it was just a curiosity. And Bob told me, "Well, you'll find out. It'll be quite an experience to meet him." And indeed, it wasn't very long before he had made an appointment to see me. And he marched into my office, and what an amazing, redoubtable man he was. Very knowledgeable about concrete. He'd worked for Besser for many, many years. He was trained as a ceramics engineer, I believe in Illinois, and he came to work for Besser and did an outstanding job there. And he indeed was one of the progenitors of the Concrete Tech Associate degree back in the 60s when the program was just first getting started. And there were others like it around the country, and this is the only one that survived. And so survival of the fittest, I guess. We were the fittest, and we have survived thanks to his good offices in assisting us with the program. And he also, in addition to starting the program, being involved in that activity, was an instructor in the program for a number of years. And so I have rarely met a person who had such a great combination of intelligence and will and desire to do good for his industry and for the whole community as Lucas Pfeifenberger. I should say the late Lucas Pfeifenberger, because we were all saddened by his passing in June or July of this year. And it was, for me, his interests and that of his widow, Janet, extended way beyond concrete technology. Much of it was there through scholarships and professional development for the concrete tech instructors, but also they were fans of the fine arts. They made donations to the college for artworks for humanities courses. They endowed the teaching chair position we have at ACC, which provides funds for an outstanding faculty member to take on a special project with extra resources. They also helped the lineman rodeo team for the utility tech program get to the competitions from around the nation, and where they have done very well. And there are travel expenses that the Pfeifenbergers helped with. So in so many ways, Lucas and Janet helped ACC, but the heart and soul and really the genesis of it all was with the Concrete Tech program. Again, him being a Besser engineer and seeing the college as a great center for training where expertise with education and talent cultivation was in abundance, and he saw the opportunity, he made it work.
When I was in the Blockmakers, my superior, or my boss, was Lucas Pfeifenberger. He was a wonderful person. I worked with him in the 2-year in the concrete program that the college had, but then after I went to work in the Blockmakers, he was my direct supervisor. And working with Lucas was very interesting. He was a kind of a person who would take all the time in the world that you needed so that you understood perfectly what he wanted. Or if he was teaching you something, he wanted you to make sure that you knew exactly what he was trying to communicate to you. He would say things like, he would get chuckles out of the classes because he taught the classes also. And his background was in ceramics and aggregates and materials, the raw materials used to make blocks with, or any concrete actually. And he would say things like, the reason blocks were so popular was because the farmers that built barns out of them had contented cattle. Now those were kind of silly little things, but he would put those into his teaching so that people would remember that. Now I remember it, and he taught me that 30 years ago or more. So, but I worked during the 80s with Lucas, and even afterwards. He was a wonderful person, just a wonderful person to know. He had his little idiosyncrasies, we all do. But if you had a question and you wanted the right answer, and if he didn't know it, he would help you to get the right answer. And so he was very, very dependable, very the kind of a person that if you wanted something, he was the guy to go to.
We're fortunate to have a good cadre of Besser employees as instructors and good leadership. We still get comments from customers that how's Lucas, or how's Bob Rohn, or how's Eric Krebs. We had to treat the customers from overseas fairly because sometimes their English was slower than some of the other people in the class, and occasionally we had translators, which meant there was more time to capture the points being made by the instructors, and I think some of the Americans liked to slow down as well. Of course, it was unique, and to duplicate it would be very difficult. Others have attempted to duplicate the World Center for Concrete Technology, but the facility and the instructors and the equipment are just not able to be met by anybody in the industry.
I did want to put a few thoughts toward Bob Rohn. Bob and I taught together for almost 20 years. When I was first hired in 1988, Bob is a pretty good baseball fan and quite an expert, and took little league teams to the almost to the World Series, one game away from the World Series. And I have a baseball background. And one of the comments from Lucas Pfeifenberger at that time was he wasn't so sure that I should be hired because Bob and I would just be sitting around talking baseball. Well, we were much more professional than that, and Bob taught me an awful lot. Took me on trips, first time into block plants, standing back and watching the operation. Bob was an expert on curing. Learned an awful lot about curing from Bob. And then also his presentation. I studied him a lot. Of course, you don't want to emulate exactly his movements and his expressions and so forth, but he was a unique, down-to-earth guy, and all the students enjoyed him. In most cases, anybody that had been in Bob's class would always remember the schematics. Over the years, he had done these schematics so many times that he had actually memorized it, so that he would walk around from the podium and everybody would be reading line after line of these pretty heavy-duty schematics, and Bob would be walking around saying, do you see in line number 4, there's a 1 CRD contact that's normally open, or there's this limit switch and so forth. And people would literally look around to see if he was looking at a teleprompter in the back, but he had it memorized verbatim, which is a unique trick, and I tried it a couple times and flubbed up quite a few times, but it was unique. He was also a great guy to, at those times, we would take, every Thursday night, we would take the class out to Besser Bell. We would have a little graduation party and so forth, and he taught me how to stand up in front of classes and kind of wing it, but you never really, you already had your plan with Bob in mind of, he would tell you that, and he would be a good critique at the end of the day. Hey, you should have expressed this a little bit more. You didn't answer this guy. I mean, a true mentor and a great friend.
Pete and Eric were very good friends, mentors. We all worked together as a team, first of all. As a team, Eric would lead us. He would give us different assignments to do. And then we could actually mentor each other. Pete's strong points were with the materials and that, and mine was more with the equipment on the electrical side, so we blended well, and Eric kept everything equal there. as a coach. Eric was a very, very good coach, still is a very close friend of mine. And it really helped to tie things together. We did a lot of research, a lot of R&D at the WCCT, and writing of classes. So it was very unique. It was a unique team. We knew each other for a long time, and it worked well, really well.
Coming to my first class and being introduced to Bob Rohn, in my mind, he was like a rock star, you know, like a Mick Jagger or a Brian Johnson from AC/DC. He knew the prints from the back of his hand. He could tell you the line diagram, had it completely memorized. So it was wonderful to see a man that could get up there, and he had such passion, and he was such a good teacher that it was really you left on that Friday with a whole new passion and a whole new outlook on what you were going to do that Monday when you went in and ran your machine. So it was an absolutely wonderful experience.
As the program continued to evolve, the college took more and more commitment. College instructors continued to improve on the equipment and the training techniques, and we went from Blockmakers to Besser Tech to the World Center for Concrete Technology. All the presidents of Alpena Community College have become strong proponents of this program, and that continues to move forward today. I was pleased that President Olin Joynton attended when I received the honorary award from the National Concrete Masonry Association.
As far as the value of the interaction with Besser Company, with the World Center, I have 4 or 5 instances of really good things coming from the way the center operates. The ACC trustees, corporately or together, as a board, supervise me as the president, and among the board's responsibilities are to set goals for the college. And one of those goals is to, whenever possible, conduct ACC business in partnerships and alliances to expand learning opportunities. And there's a plaque in the World Center for Concrete Technology that says, Besser Company, Alpena Community College, Education and Industry United. And I often refer to that as one of my favorite places on our campus because it does not only symbolize but indicate the reality of what I call the best partnership between a community college and a private company that I have ever seen in nearly 40 years of the community college business. So hats off to Besser Company and the other people who have made it happen in the community, within the college, for carrying off something so truly wonderful and outstanding. And so as I think about reporting to a board of trustees, I have to give an account of how the college has fulfilled or achieved the goals that the trustees have set. And this business of partnerships and alliances in order to expand learning opportunities, the way that the World Center for Concrete Technology functions with the Besser partnership provides a great example for me to discuss with the trustees of how the college truly is adhering to the goals set by the trustees, something critical for my accountability to the board. I think another source of value for the World Center for Concrete Technology, Besser being a worldwide company in over 110 different countries, causes the World Center to be a place where people from all over the world come together and learn and advance the concrete industry business. And so the international flavor and the element of learning from other countries, how business practices work there, and their opportunity to see how we do things here, I think is certainly an important product of the partnership with Besser. I also know that the way in which the Blockmakers classes bring students from all over the world to study here adds a good bit of economic stimulus to the local economy with the hospitality industries, the restaurants, the motels, the shops, the places that people who are here for a week or so come to visit and patronize. That's something that ties in with another one of the goals for ACC that I get from the trustees, be a center for economic development and growth in the Alpena area.
The relationship with the community college from a business standpoint has been critical to Besser Company's success. I go back, well, probably a little bit before Dr. Don Newport, and all the presidents have had a strong interest relationship with Besser Company. There's been tremendous programs that have helped our employees, whether it's welding, whether they're programming classes. They've been very consistent in helping Besser Company. So,
well, one of the things that became really very apparent to me early on as president was that I had to learn a whole new language if I was going to have a good relationship with either the company or with that industry. So instead of lightweight blocks, we had concrete masonry units. Instead of rock, we had aggregate. The language was one that I just had to pick up. So that was kind of fun. And of course, it took me a while because I'm a slow learner as a college president sometimes. And folks used to get a great charge out of giving me a little bit of jab every once in a while when I would use the wrong terminology in relationship with the program. I also had to learn a lot about the cultures of the world, because the program was bringing students in from literally the four corners of our world, from China to Egypt to Dominican to Mexico, you name it. It seemed like every Blockmakers class would have students in it from someplace other than the United States. So it was a real opportunity for me to begin expanding my own appreciation and understanding of what the world culture is like and how the Blockmakers program and the materials themselves influence that culture and help to make it a better place for people to live and to earn a living. The other thing that always struck me about the program was the zeal of everyone that seemed to get involved. From Jim Park to Lucas Pfeifenberger to Eric Krebs to you name it, a whole bunch of folks. Bob Rohn, I forgot. But a great variety of people all had that zeal for promoting the industry. And certainly as our relationships have continued to mature and grow over the years, the program has correspondingly become a model program for how an educational institution and an industry, not just a company, but an entire industry can work together to grow and develop good stuff for the American economy.
Well, the transition from the program at the Besser plant over to the facility on Johnson Street went very smoothly because we had the intent to make that an independent operation. And when the new equipment got in, and it became an outstanding way to show off the equipment, but also train employees, train customers really, and get them knowledgeable of how the equipment operated. And as it progressed then into Alpena Community College and to the Blockmakers and to the World Center, and of course that World Center has become more than just a training center for people to make concrete block anymore. It's now a wide range of activities that take place will add to the industry.
Transitioning from the Besser Research and Training Center, which was another part of the Alpena Community College campus, we had a block machine, a small block machine. We had 1 or 2 racks. Again, this is 1988 when I started, and we couldn't go into a big production. We only had a very small 30 cubic foot mixer, so we were limited in scope and size and what we could really do. And of course, access to the machinery was real tight quarters also. So earlier, well, through those early 90s, late 90s, the president of the college, Don Newport, and Jim Park, president of the Besser Company, CEO at that time, got together and had this concept of the World Center for Concrete Technology. It came to fruition in 2000, and when we moved over to the World Center, once it opened, it was staggering the size and the scope and the things that we could do that we didn't have the ability to do. Things I mentioned earlier like pneumatics, hydraulics. We at the World Center have a fully automated block plant from top to bottom. By that I mean we could turn that machine on, the system on, and we could make 10,000 block a day. Now of course we don't do that, but we have that ability, so we can show real live animation or real live product coming down the line, curing it, putting it through an unloading system, going through a curing, going outside and being cubed, right from aggregates, mixing, right onto when it would essentially go onto a truck. So it was pretty unique. Also, the innovations in as I mentioned, projectors from the ceiling, lights, all the other things that are perfect for presentation just went right to the top of the charts. It was really a premier situation that we came into.
My first few classes were in the old school, so, and that's what it was, old school. It was a good classroom. It was a okay facility, just a machine in a basically a shed. And coming back and doing further training after 2000 was like going to a outdoor baseball game. It was that was such a game changer. The classroom was state of the art. The facility was state of the art with the V312 and the batching equipment and the mixing equipment and the curing and the unloading and the fully automated cuber. So it was you were pretty much starstruck when you came into the World Center of Concrete Technology for the first time, especially for us that experienced the old building, and the investment that was made into the World Center of Concrete Technology was just a gift to the industry, because it was a wonderful training facility or proving ground for the industry.
One of the fascinating activities that took place during my presidency, and something that quite frankly I'm very proud of, was the transition from a classroom and kind of almost a semi-warehouse kind of a setting here on campus to the development of the World Center for Concrete Technology. And what that center really reflects is the commitment of the industry to training and development and producing people who really understand the industry and have that almost missionary spirit for producing the right kind of product for the industry. So as we looked ahead and making that move, it was one of those joys for a college president, of course, to go out and ask for a little bit of money. It's always a challenge, but what I was very fortunate to find was a very receptive audience. The industry itself, certainly here locally, the Besser Company and the Besser Foundation was absolutely phenomenal in coming forward with the first lead gift for the program. But then we did folks from all over the country stepping up to the place. One of the larger donations came from another former Alpenian, Bill Harris, who the building actually is named after. Bill's commitment came from many years of work with the concrete side of things and producing that particular product. And Bill was such an easy sell when we went down to Florida to sit down with him and talk about being a second lead gifter for the program. So once again, looking at the industry and how willing the industry was to say it's the right time for us to move ahead and take this step in building a center where we focused on that entire industry and produced the kind of well-trained people that we've been able to do over the years.
Well, as I think about the creation of the World Center for Concrete Technology, it indeed seems amazing, if not miraculous, that many stars could align to create such a great operation, such a representation of a premier training field at ACC. And the reason why it's amazing, if not miraculous, is as we continue to deal with companies all over Northeast Michigan and understand their training needs, there's not yet one or one industry cluster that I can think of that would have done something or would be willing to do something on the scale of the World Center for Concrete Technology. The World Center for Industry X, it's something we could dream about, and the creators of the World Center for Concrete Technology, and I have to give credit to my predecessor, Dr. Don Newport, and also the Besser chairman and CEO at the time, Jim Park, who, and the current CEO, Kevin Curtis, the vision that those people had for the industry and the ability to get the job done to create the center and put it on a good footing. What an incredible accomplishment. I have not been able to match anything on that scale, and it's not for lack of trying, but the ability of people in education and industry to come together like that, truly an impressive milestone of accomplishment.
I think two of the interesting stories that come to mind real quick as far as how things developed within the World Center and or at the Besser Research and Training. For instance, you're in Alpena, Michigan. Why would people come all the way to Alpena, Michigan in the winter where it's cold? And a lot of people have not even experienced the cold. And one time we had a blizzard, and of course the schools shut down, the college shut down. But at that time, Lucas Pfeifenberger was the administrator, and he said, no, we're going to hold our classes anyway. So Bob Rohn, myself, others, we jumped on snowmobiles, and we came into the college, opened the college up, and then we carted we ran over to the Holiday Inn with our snowmobiles, had the people dress up pretty warmly, and then we would bring them over to the college. That happened for about 2 days before the snow and everything was dissipated enough to continue normal activities. But I think the people got a real kick out of it, and of course it really showed a high amount of energy on Lucas's part for making sure that as long as people have traveled this far, we're going to hold the class. So that was one of the unique experience. I guess the other one would be 9/11. We were teaching a class during 9/11. And one of the gentlemen in the class, Danny Polanco, was from New York, and he was just amazed at the pictures that we were seeing coming in of the towers and the planes crashing in the towers and so forth. And he was a young man at that time. And Danny finally progressed through the industry and ended up being a supervisor and a superintendent. Then he started sending his co-workers or his understudies to the World Center for their education on the Besser equipment, and lo and behold, his company got the contract for the new center in New York. So all the block were made from a gentleman's factory that they actually started when they were learning here about the Besser machines, Besser block, and the World Center. So World Center and Trade Center, they sometimes get mixed up, but in this case it really did have a similarity.
I can recall one time we had 4 people from China, and they were sent here, I think, by the United Nations, and it was communist China at the time. And they had invited me and my wife and my 2 children over to the hotel where they were staying, and they put on an entire meal. Now, I had 2 young children who were, I think, maybe 10 or 12 years old at the time. And I think my son was probably 10 and my daughter was probably 12. And they could not believe that we had 2 children. In China, they were not allowed to have 2 children. And they just loved those kids. And they cooked us a meal. And they actually, being from China, would not eat hardly any food in a restaurant because they did not like the taste of the meat or anything. They would go down to the meat store or wherever it was, and the butcher shop or the grocery store, and pick out their own products so they could make their own food, so they knew they felt safe and felt comfortable eating it. But when we went there to their house, to their hotel room, I'm sorry, it was totally Chinese food, as much as you could make Chinese food in the United States. Their food was totally different than you would even get in a Chinese restaurant here in the States. So it was real Chinese food, and it was wonderful. I got to do those things with a few of our customers, and it was very interesting and very rewarding to work with those people that way.
Some of the fun things that I can recall are the various testing projects that we participated in. We tried to consolidate garbage one time, and it was a mess, but we worked on it. We had real rough coal ash that we were attempting to make into fire logs. It was wrapped in paper, and in theory, if we could get it consolidated and bricked, then you could just throw that paper and kind of coal in the fireplace. Many of our projects work, many of them don't, but it's still one of the world's best facilities to test and run waste products. So,
one of the unique stories I have was basically right after I started teaching at the World Center. We were still over at the Besser Tech Center, and Mr. Rohn and Mr. Krebs asked me to go with them to a seminar and do some of the training, which was great. And well, we got to the seminar, and we were probably in front of 100+ people. And Mr. Rohn, he got up and did his spiel, and then Mr. Krebs did. And when I got up, I had enough information for probably 15 to 20 minutes. And I went through my information in about 2 minutes. And I've never felt this before. I only felt it once, but I felt like somebody dumped 2 buckets of water under my arms. And I was lucky enough to have Eric Krebs standing there. Eric popped back up on stage and redirected my thoughts and attention to a customer / student out in the crowd. And I answered his question. Everything kind of settled down then. But it was the talk of the airplane coming home, basically, how quick I went through 15 minutes of information in about 2 minutes. And one other one, we were in a VibraPack class. It had to do a lot with electrical troubleshooting. And the students can always put a problem in for the instructors, and it helps the students, it helps them learn. So I actually put some problems in, and then the students came back and said, well, let's go ahead, can we put some in for you and Eric? Sure, go ahead. And they put them in, and it was pretty good. It actually took me about an hour after class to fix it. And after that, I went out to we call Besser Bell. Besser Bell is a facility used for graduations, Blockmakers graduations. And as I walked in the door, the student that put the problem in walked up to me and said, you know, I'll help you in the morning. Fix it, bring it back. And I said, well, it's already ready. And he said, no, it can't be. And he said, I'll bet you that it's not. Well, I says, I'll take that bet. And then Eric, again, my mentor, was standing there, and he said, we probably can't do that. So the next morning, I met the student at the front door. He came in with me. We turned the panel on, and it was ready to run. And he thanked me for getting it ready to run, and then he walked over and thanked Eric for not letting him bet, because Eric saved him $100.
Well, I suppose the most unforgettable moment in that class was we had a group from Mexico, and they were studying here, learning how to use the Besser machines, and the class was going very, very, very well. And for the Blockmaker classes, usually on Thursday of a 5-day work week, we have a get-together, either a noon luncheon or an evening meal together. We call it the graduation ceremony. And the students are nearly done, and we expect them to finish. And so we have a bit of celebration before they need to generally fly out or drive out to other places Friday afternoon after the class is finished. And it's a social occasion. It's an opportunity for visiting as well as having an academic purpose. One of the nice things that happens is each member of the class is called upon to come up and make a little speech about whether that he or she achieved the goals that brought them here. And so what did they get out of the class and that sort of thing. That's always very, it's good feedback for us because we want to be in tune with the goals and objectives that our students have in coming to the Blockmaker classes. And so an opportunity to hear them express whether they actually achieved the goals is very important to us in keeping the class fresh and current and relevant to the needs of people who come here. So in that kind of environment, we were eating our dinner and then starting up the speeches, and then the unforgettable moment was one of the organizers of the group from Mexico was just an extraordinarily beautiful Mexican woman. And one of the students stood up to make his speech about whether his goals and objectives were met, and he did a little bit of that, but then he turned to the lady to whom I've just alluded and made a proposal of marriage to her. She was so stunning to him and so overwhelming that right then and there he popped the question and the whole place went up in smoke. It was just everybody laughed at him, and she handled it well. She retained her composure and accepted the compliment, and I don't think they ever got married, but it was just a memorable moment. There's also an environment with the Blockmaker classes of teamwork, and it doesn't matter what your title is. If there's a job to be done, well, people get out and do it. And so I well remember that one of the mixers had some residue of a previous experiment in it or something like that. I think some chunks of concrete that needed to be cleaned out. And I was looking for Vice President Don McMaster one day, and somebody told me, well, he's over in the equipment room at the World Center for Concrete Technology. So I went over there, and I had some kind of administrative matter to discuss with him, and there he was up in the mixer, chipping pieces of concrete in his work clothes out, and so just shows you that whatever it takes to get the job done is the ethos and the work responsibility of everyone over there. And it was pretty amazing to see him up there chipping away at the concrete, which somebody else could have done, but nobody else had the time, and it needed to be done to get ready for the next Blockmaker class.
With cement as still the most economical glue to form concrete, the future for concrete masonry continues bright. While for many years we have studied what new materials are coming down the road to replace concrete, so far not much has been found. Fortunately, there are good raw materials around the world, limestone for cement in almost every country, as well as water and other aggregates. So the future of concrete technology looks very bright indeed.
You know, as I reflect on the time that I was here and working on this particular program, what really does come to mind is how that relationship really represents how good partnerships are built. between a community college such as ours and business and industry. And certainly as we look at the results, many people could learn how to build good partnerships by looking at the history and the evolution of this relationship over really almost, a half a century.
When we moved over the World Center in 2000, we were in that range of 500 students per year. And I didn't realize, and of course Bob Rohn, being my mentor again, helped me understand that as the economy went, not just as Besser went, but as the economy went, so goes the student count. In other words, the familiar phrase catch-22, but as the industry is strong and going and they're producing every day, they don't have an opportunity to send their students, customers, to us because they're busy. On the other end, as things slow down in the economy or the construction industry, then they don't have the dollars and funds to send up. So we had to react to that with innovation and trying to still get that education to them. Hence, at the World Center now, we have the online applications. We have most of the classes can be taken online. And that is a whole nother part of education and growth that I never expected, or something that was certainly a challenge for us. So those will be continuing throughout the economy as the economy goes up and down. But we at the World Center want to try to continue to hit that education.
Lots of opportunities, and we see going forward in the future recycled materials as a key strategic element of Besser Company's future. If we can be the lead in recycled materials, creating new aggregates, new ways of curing, we can help with reducing energy costs and improve the environment. So we think there's a very strong future and importance and need for the World Center for Concrete Technology.
We've had machinery that was built in the 30s and 40s that's still running right now. So that just tells you how this equipment lasts, and that's just to the credit of Jesse Besser and the whole crew over at Besser Company. And what our purpose was in the Blockmakers was to make sure that kept going that way.
The innovations that happened from 1988 when I started thinking about flip sheets. We didn't even have computers yet, so everything was on a flip sheet. We talked about that. And then VCRs came out. All of a sudden presentations were into PowerPoints. It just really rolled when you think about from 1988 to the present time. It was rather quick.
I started in 1978 with Besser Company as a management trainee assigned to the customer service department, and my first requirement was to take the series of Besser Blockmaker classes that were offered. And at the time, we participated with customers, so there was a customer class in January, and we took the classes right alongside of our customers. It's a requirement that I still hold of our Besser managers, new people that are hired. I want them to go through the Blockmakers courses today. It's such an important part of an understanding that you have to have if you want to be a good Besser rep.
The student perspective was twofold. One was the great teaching that we got from the instructors and the hands-on instruction. Secondly was the interaction with the classmates, not only during class, during breaks, during lunch, but also after hours at the hotel, in the bar, just in a nice relaxed atmosphere, finding out what other companies and other issues that people had, and finding out their solutions was invaluable.